Oh boy! Nightmare headline! Yay! Exactly the horrific worst-case scenario line the Republicans might try to go down is exactly what they've decided to go down. Quote, screws up the female brain. MAGA leaders are conditioning Republicans to back birth control bans. Listen, guys. No matter how many times the Republicans say they just want to blank or they just want to do that, they always want to do more. There is no compromise with the right. They cannot compromise. Part of their entire worldview, their fundamental moral principle is that they must win at all costs, utterly and unequivocally, and there can be no compromise when you have utter victory. That is not complete, total victory. And conservatives must have total victory for their worldview to be achieved. Because a big part of their worldview is that it is inevitable. Have you guys noticed that? That, like, conservatives will argue that their worldview and their beliefs are inevitably going to win without even a second thought. With the left, it's more of like, hey, there has always generally been a trend to more progressive, but that's not always the case. That could change if people aren't actively trying to advocate for, like, progressive ideas. But for the right, they kind of act as though part of their ideology fundamentally is that eventually everyone grows up and matures into understanding it's the right way to think. But if that doesn't happen, then that's a self-defeating worldview. Or maybe not. I mean, conservatism has been a self-defeating worldview for a very long time, and yet it's still here. It's still around. Charlie Kirk, the head of the MAGA propaganda behemoth Turning Point USA, recently unveiled a novel theory as to why young women tend to vote for Democrats. Oh, let's hear this interesting theory. Unwilling to admit that women can think for themselves, Kirk floated the theory that birth control pills cause brain damage. Birth control, like, I don't really know how he sounds, honestly. Actually, let me see if I can... How's he sound again?
A lot of them are on birth control too, and...
Birth control really screws up female brains? He falsely claimed before a crowd at a recent church event streamed on the far-right site Rumble, claiming the pill, quote, increases depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. He then blamed women's voting patterns on hormonal contraception. Quote, it creates a very angry and bitter young woman and young ladies and young women, Kirk argued. Quote, then that bitterness manifests into a political party that is the bitter party. I mean, the Democratic Party is all about bring us your bitterness and, you know, we'll give you free stuff. Wow. So the reason women vote Democrat isn't because the right says stuff like that about women. It's because the birth control makes their brains damaged, and then it makes them bitter. And then because they're bitter, they vote Democrat, because the Democrats say if you're bitter, you'll get free stuff. That just seems like saying women are hysterical, but with extra steps, you know? Like, why not just say women are hysterical, and then there you go. That's why women don't vote Republican. Here's him saying it himself.
A lot of them are on birth control too, and birth control, like, really screws up female brains, by the way. Every single one of you need to make sure that your loved ones are not on birth control. It increases depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation.
He's such a funny-looking guy. Jesus Christ. How is someone who looks like this allowed to be this influential? Like, no matter what angle you look at him from, he's just so fucking weird-looking. He, like, why is he... Like, it really does look like his face is like pasted onto, like, this is not the proper face, like, blueprint of a person. Like, it looks like somebody sewed a child's face onto a man's blank face. Does that make sense to you guys? It looks like they cut the face off of a child and then found, like, a blank-faced man, and then, like, seamlessly sewed that child's face onto the blank-faced man, but the face is too small, so it doesn't fit on the head. Like, look at this image. The longer you look at it, the more wrong it looks.
birth control is the #1 most
Yeah,
prescribed
no,
medication.
exactly. They put a child's face, like they stitched a child's face onto Slender Man, but Slender Man has a big head, so the face itself is tiny on the head and it looks weird. He's a creature. Oh my god, look at his receding hairline too. That is a fucking unfortunate. Oh my god, he did not have a lot of not forehead to spare either.
Young ladies under the age of 25, they will give young ladies birth control for pimples, for acne, to control their moods, their period. It is awful. It's terrible, and it creates very angry and bitter young ladies and young.
Notice how the common through line is always, time and time again, we are taking away the rights of insert minority group because it is better for them. And here is like a convoluted, in no way agreed upon by experts or scientists or doctors, narrative about how it is, right? And you'll only hear men repeating it, and maybe a few women who have never taken birth control and have like 12 kids or something. Christ.
Women, that bitterness then manifests into a political party that is the bitter party. I mean, the Democrat Party is all about bring us your bitterness and, we'll give you free stuff. It's like we'll trade you, bitterness for stuff, essentially. That's like the Democrat.
It is wild that, like, they actually think like this, Like, conservatives genuinely think that is how the left thinks. Like, yeah, we're bitter about everything because we care about stuff that's happening that's bad and unjust. And so, we think that if you care enough about things that are bad and unjust, then you'll just magically get given free stuff. And it's like, that is clearly a very uncharitable way to characterize what the left really stands for, which is, generally speaking, the idea that recognizing, caring about, and, like, caring to discuss and bring attention to atrocities and injustice in the world means that you are a decent person. And if you try to bring about justice, then perhaps one day you can improve the world in such a way that not just you, but others in future generations will be able to live better lives than the ones expected to be lived when you were born into the world. Like, you hope to make generations better, or like the lives of future generations better than yours was, and than your, like, the previous generation was. But to conservatives, this, like, idea is being bitter. Like, a lot of conservatives think that caring about, say, what's happening in Israel-Palestine is quote-unquote giving a shit about a conflict thousands of miles away that will never affect you, right? They actively think it's ridiculous to even have an opinion on a conflict like that. Because if it doesn't affect you, why the fuck do you care? And it's like, well, because children are dying. It's like, are they your kids? Do you know them? Are they in your country? Will you ever see them outside the internet? How far are they? Thousands of miles away. Once again, why do you care? They will just hit you with that line of questioning over and over again. And there will never be a point, at least in a actual conversation you'd have with these types, where it clicks for them that there is there is validity in caring about human life on a fundamental level. So they are anti-human. Yeah, I mean, they don't have a fundamental, like, they don't believe that human life is fundamentally valuable at all. Like, ask them, is human life fundamentally valuable? And like, challenge them on it if they say yes, and see how quickly that falls apart. They do not believe human life has fundamental value. They believe that human life has to earn value. As with most things MAGA leaders say, Kirk's claim is so misleading that it can only be called lying. First, of course, accusing Democrats of being bitter is rich coming from MAGA, whose entire pitch is bitterness. Yeah, their entire thing is insulting those that are progressive, such as saying the entire left only cares about bitterness. More importantly, he's lying about the pill. A tiny percentage of women have mental health issues with birth control. The most rigorous research shows it affects 0.5%, or 1 in 200 women on the pill. Granted, Kirk was so bad at basic studies like math that he dropped out of community college at age 18. Still, even the biggest Nimrod can grasp the half of a single percentage point is not a big number. But of course, Kirk is not sincerely mistaken, and he certainly isn't concerned about the well-being of women, which all reputable research shows is dramatically improved by having birth control over their fertility. Kirk's doctor cosplay is part of a much larger and semi-coordinated strategy among right-wing leaders to demonize birth control and train the GOP base into believing that restricting or even banning contraception is justified. As the Washington Post reported last month, the right-wing activists have been flooding social media with the same lies that Kirk was echoing in his video. It's a well-financed disinformation campaign, getting a major boost from MAGA billionaire Peter Thiel, who has aggressively financed teams of messengers to falsely claim that hormonal birth control, quote, tricked our bodies into dysfunction and pain. Doctors report that the tidal wave of misinformation about birth control is creating a healthcare crisis, including women who, quote, come in for abortions after believing that what they see on social media about the dangers of hormonal birth control, unquote. Yeah, Peter Thiel is a fucking monster who is like the king of right-wing disinformation funding right now. He's like a massive like dark money funder. On top of that, if you've seen like those posts on right-wing Twitter lately where it's like a woman talking about all the horrible experiences she's had with hormonal birth control, it's part of like a massive bot campaign on Twitter to push this idea that there is a huge cultural wave of women calling out the evils of birth control. Go to their accounts, they're usually name bunch of numbers, and they oftentimes have posted from Russian town despite claiming to be an American account. Interesting. Of course, the real reason MAGA leaders don't like birth control is they oppose the freedom and opportunities that it has afforded women. Kirk barely bothers to hide that this is his real agenda. In the very same talk, he also tries to threaten women who hold out for Mr. Right instead of settling for Mr. Incel. Quote, in their 30s, they get really upset because they say the boys don't want to date me anymore because they're not at their prime, he claims, echoing the unevidenced revenge fantasy that dominates misogynist message boards. In reality, of course, the median age for marriage is creeping up to almost 30 for women, up from age 20 in 1960. If women become unmarriageable at 30, it wouldn't be the case that it is the age when most of them are getting married. Kirk is just pulling the tired old right-wing trick of trying to spin his desire to control women as chivalry. It's the same line we've heard in so many ways, that freedom is bad for women because they supposedly don't have the mental capacity to handle it, and wouldn't they just be happier under male control? The angry male masses may enjoy the fantasy of women regretting their choice not to just give up and settle for a Trump voter, but even anti-feminist activists know that it's a hard sell, both politically and legally. So instead of openly admitting that sadism fuels their desire to restrict birth control, it's repackaged as protecting women from imaginary health risks. It's the exact same playbook that the right has been using for decades to argue against abortion rights. Before Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, Republicans relentlessly passed laws making it harder to get an abortion, such as mandatory waiting periods with false claims that these were medically necessary restrictions. In 2016, a more liberal Supreme Court shot down some of these restrictions on the grounds that the science used to justify them was made-up nonsense. But anti-choicers haven't gonna... I cannot speak today. I need to take a sip of water. I'm so sorry. Hold on a second, okay? My mouth is so dry, my tongue keeps getting, caught, stuck on the roof of my mouth, and it keeps cutting off my words. It's weird. In 2016, a more liberal Supreme Court shot down some of those restrictions on the grounds that the science used to justify them was made-up nonsense, but anti-choicers haven't given up hoping that fake science will beat reproductive rights. The abortion pill challenge pending review by the Supreme Court, for example, is based on 3 articles that were eventually retracted. In reality, of course, medication abortions done without the drug in question are more painful and dangerous. Even some of the most anti-abortion justices, such as Amy Coney Barrett, sounded skeptical about banning a safe pill based on alternative facts, which is why it's no surprise that the 2 most loudly MAGA members of the court, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, started instead to talk up the Comstock Act, an 1873 anti-sex law that stopped being enforced decades ago but was never repealed. Talk about reviving this law has grown louder in right-wing circles, mainly because they see it as a way of Donald a way for Donald Trump, if he regains the White House, to unilaterally ban abortion without having to ask congressional Republicans to take an unpopular vote. For the far right, the beauty of the Comstock Act is it sidesteps all these pesky questions about health safety, and instead, the law bans not just abortion, but pretty much anything associated with human sexuality, from contraception to nudes and art. Oh shit. They're full on passing purity laws. Like, or what is the term? Like full on, like banning any form of what they consider degeneracy if they can pass this. The law forbids shipment of every, quote, obscene, lewd, lascivious, indecent, filthy, or vile article, matter, thing, device, or substance. It was used to prosecute not just abortion provision, but also people who sold obscene books and materials, including literary works like Ulysses by James Joyce, and art like nude paintings of the goddess Venus. All sex education, even for married couples, was outlawed. It also banned not just birth control, but also sharing information on how to prevent pregnancy, which means it would cover even those, quote, wellness sites that make misleading claims that period tracking is effective contraception. Anthony Comstock, the infamous prude who was behind the law, was much like Charlie Kirk, in that his misogynist intent was never far beneath the surface. He frequently bragged about how many women he'd driven to suicide by relentlessly prosecuting them for helping other women get reproductive health care or explaining the mechanisms of sex to newlyweds. Within the first 5 years of the bill, he gloated that he had forced 15 women to take their lives. He tried but failed to do this to Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger, repeatedly targeting her for arrest for teaching women to prevent pregnancy. Sanger did not, despite anti-choice propaganda claiming otherwise, offer abortion. But conservatives know it's not popular to loudly champion a law written by a man who once claimed, quote, books are feeders for brothels. So instead, we're getting this tsunami of hand-wringing about the imaginary damage that birth control is doing to women who are forever presumed by conservatives to be too dim to be trusted with their own decisions. The malevolence is never that hard to see. However, concern that women who have sex will end up lonely cat ladies is less a reflection of sincere trepidation and more a bit of wish casting. Conservatives long for women to be punished, even as their anger reflects a deeper understanding that women are actually doing pretty well with this freedom and equality thing. The fact is, conservatives, when they say, women hit the wall at 30, it's more like saying, rain, rain, go away. They don't think it's actually a thing that happens. They don't really believe it. They know it's not the case. It's more so something they say as a sort of curse. It's like, fuck you, it's an insult. It's a hope. It's a wish. They want there to be a punishment for these women daring not to have sex with them and become their, breeding mares. So, obviously, the Republicans are heavily now focusing their attention on the banning of birth control now. They will not stop. Condoms, all forms of birth control and contraception will be banned if they're able to gain full unilateral control of the government. I mean, across the red states alone, they might just get their way through and through without any pushback, considering the Supreme Court is fully Republican and the red states are pretty fully Republican. We might see policies like this actually pass in some red states, and if we're lucky, see a massive exodus from those red states. That would be pretty nice. I would like to see something like that. Regardless, though, if you want to fight against this, if you want to try and keep conservatives from taking away your rights, if you care about protecting them anywhere near as much as conservatives care about taking them away from you, please consider signing up to work with Progressive Victory. If you do !PV in my chat right now, you'll get a link to their website where you can sign up to go to their canvassing events, where you can knock on doors and convince people to vote blue in local elections. Hell, they've even got phone banking opportunities for you. So without even having to leave the house, you can just make phone calls to people and convince them, just like I do, to vote for a blue candidate. Seriously, it is a very effective way that you can actually affect change here in your community or just anywhere around the country. please consider signing up with Progressive Victory. Consider working with them no matter what you want to do or what you're comfortable with. They probably have some valuable work for you to do that can help protect your rights. So consider signing up with them. There's also a link down below in the description if you watch this as a video when it goes out on YouTube. And not to mention, if you enjoy my content and you like my videos, please consider leaving a like. Every single thumbs up really does go a long way to support the channel. It basically forces it in the algorithm out to more people's recommended, so I really do appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell icon if you haven't already. And yeah, comment down below if you also want to boost the video. It really helps boosting in the algorithm when you guys comment. But yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed.